I will officially start the meeting on Tuesday, July 10th for the Raymore Arts Commission. Mike, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Barry.
Present.
Commissioner Lawrence.
Here.
Commissioner Paris.
Here.
Commissioner Setzer.
Present.
Commissioner Jones.
Here.
Okay, that constitutes a quorum. Therefore, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we don't appear to have any public comments tonight or any presentations. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, then why don't we just, actually, we'll just go into staff reports first, I guess. Mike.
First item on the staff report is a budget update, and we had a request at our last meeting. So you have two budgets attached in your packet. The first one, the FY 2018 Arts Commission budget, is the current true reflection of expenditures through the current date. And so this shows all of the items that we have spent money on through the Arts Commission budget, including the summer scene, True Up, as well as our Memorial Park permanent art piece.
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to stop you for a second. You're talking about the previous budget. We don't have one attached here. So you're just talking about what we have seen earlier?
I don't see anything there.
I apologize. You should have. Let me pull that up because it would be much easier for everyone to see.
We just have the 2 pages, yeah.
So we didn't get really any attachments, it looks like. Well, on the initial, but.
I apologize. I did not check.
Did everybody get it? Has everybody got that pulled up? Okay, we're all set.
Okay, excellent. Makes the conversation much easier if you see what I'm talking about. And so that first budget, as I said, that is the most accurate representation of expenditures through FY18. We had a request from the Commission at our past meeting to project out the expenditures that we have remaining for future projects through the remainder of FY18. And so that is the projected FY18 Arts Commission budget. It's on the next sheet. And I want to do just a quick explanation of what you're looking at and what the different colors mean. So the items in red indicate that is a project that we have completed and we will see no other expenditures coming from. So the Memorial Park mural, the pop-up art project, farmers market sponsorship, these are all items, and through the rest, that we will not be spending any more dollars on. The items in yellow, that is an art exhibit program. That is something that could possibly have some expenditures coming from it, but we don't necessarily have anything on the agenda yet that we'll be spending money on. So there's kind of a bit of flexibility there, and I did not calculate that into the projected number at the bottom. The green items are items that we know we're going to be spending money on, either through the work plan or something moving forward. So, for example, the Tri-County Art League Art Contest, still part of the work plan. The plan is still to have that come before the Commission in the fall for $600. Also assumes that we will be spending the full $1,000 budget for Family Art Days, as well as the full $1,500 budget for classes and programming for adults. As well as we currently are under budget on our professional development by about $150, I believe, or $100, yeah, $150. And so if we were to spend the remainder of that, I went ahead and factored that in as well. So all of the numbers under that actual column come to a remaining fund balance for the Arts Commission of $3,921. That is if we are to spend all of the money under programming, all of the money under our partnerships and sponsorships, and not spend any money under the art exhibit program. But even if we were to spend money on that art exhibit program, we still would have $3,400 in the fund balance for the remainder of this fiscal year, with other projects coming in under budget.
If we decide to, for instance, on Family Art Days, if we project out that, well, we know for a fact that 200 is going to be paid out Saturday, so that would leave about $700 that's not been used yet. I don't foresee that Family Art Days is going to spend $700 before October 31st. So if we wanted to reallocate some of that, we possibly could do that. And does that require a vote by the
It would require a vote by the commission to reallocate money in the budget. Specifically, what we may want to recommend, or what the commission may want to recommend, is that staff bring forward specific proposals.
Okay.
Something that you would want to back those dollars up, saying this is what we want to reallocate that $700 toward, rather than reallocating the money from the project kind of just to an open fund balance.
Okay. All right. So that would go for any category here.
Correct.
And for any reason that the commissioners might think of before the budget goes away in October.
Correct.
Okay. Does everybody understand what we need to do if we want to reallocate? We do need to take a vote. Okay. Any questions for Mike on that budget?
Okay. Very simple. Other item, our upcoming events. We do have our event this Friday. July 13th is our summer concert series with the Brad Allen Trio. 7 p.m. at Centerview. We will have the Cheesy Street food truck as well as an ice cream vendor. They will begin at 7 and will be playing into the evening. And so we are looking forward to that, along with yard games throughout the area. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a great event. We've already seen a lot of great positive response online. So I know the word is getting out. The next event is the next day. The Family Art Day at 9:30 at the Park House. Have already been working with Jim Heath from Rock You America. And it sounds like the programming that he kind of outlined for me was he's going to have a full drum set, several different instruments from one of his bands that anyone can come in, play, and he'll offer some kind of hands-on lessons. He's also going to bring in one of his young bands to play a few songs. So if anyone is interested in hearing kind of what one of the bands from the Rock You organization can do, would be a great opportunity and a great introduction to that local business.
I know you had told me there were some people signed up, and I know people tend to wait till the very last minute, including the day before, but do we have an approximate number of how many might have already registered?
We currently have about 6 registered.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, that's great. Oh, yes, Bob.
How many can he take?
He said he'd take a class up to about 30.
That's a lot.
And that would be a very large class for instruments, but I think based on the popularity, especially of musical events, I could see that happening here in the next few days.
Okay. Any questions about that? Anybody else? Okay, thank you. Why don't we go right on into committee updates? Who's representing the PAC, talking tonight on behalf of PAC?
We met on Thursday morning and talked about a number of things, getting updated, but we also talked about a couple of possibilities. One being the budget and the fact that there is money left in the budget, and trying to be creative about how to spend it so we don't lose it. And one idea was to ask the person who came in second for the mural call for artists that we did last year, that Jacob got, And since we've reviewed all 24 of those applications and did a pretty thorough job of it, we thought perhaps we'd contact the second person and see if he wanted to perhaps do a mural and at what price he could do it, because looking at that budget overflow or underflow or whatever, we would probably not have the $5,000 that we paid Jacob. However, the place that we're talking about in Recreation Park has not got the same problematic surface that the Memorial Park surface had. So it's possible that we could come in with a little smaller price tag. Unfortunately, Mike said tonight he put in a call to that person and he hasn't gotten a call back. So that's, I guess, kind of on hold, but you know, if we put something together by the August meeting, that should be plenty of time for that person to be contacted. And I've forgotten the name of the artist. I beg your pardon. Can you remind me? Or not? It's an initial.
It is.
J.T. Taylor.
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay. And we still have on file his and the other applications that came in. So if JT is not interested, perhaps the third person would be interested. And we did have, as I recall, we had about 5 artists that we thought were all very well qualified and had something to say. So that was one thing that we talked about. We also talked a bit about the, and this probably came out of the discussions that we had with the City Council, but we talked about the venue of Hawk Ridge and what that amphitheater was going to look like. And were you able to come up with any kind of the latest incarnation of that design that we could look at?
So to give you an update, I don't have anything that you can look at just yet.
Okay.
At 6 o'clock, just before this meeting, the Park Board did finally approve a final contractor. And so we know what the parameters are going to be, and my next goal after tonight's meeting was to get plans that we'd be able to share with the Arts Commission that we could show as to relative size, amenities, and other things for the specific amphitheater. I know it has changed quite a bit since the original, I believe, version that we had talked about. So I wanted to be able to give you the most up-to-date and correct version. And even tonight's, what they approved is different than I think what we had talked about back at our meeting on Thursday.
Okay. Well, and we did stray a bit from public art and sort of into performance art, but it is of great interest to us. And of course, there will hopefully be some public art pieces at the Hawk Ridge Park too. And the last thing that we discussed sort of informally was future funding opportunities, and in other words, expanding the opportunities for funding of public art beyond the budget that the Arts Commission has. And one opportunity is that we have the foundation now in place, except for some last-minute details that the staff is working on, and we could perhaps promote private funds through the foundation. Another thing we talked about was perhaps encouraging homeowners associations and existing businesses to perhaps do some public art or participate with us and make some space available or some funds available. Even talked about maybe having like a homeowners association competition to see who has the best entrance art and that kind of thing. Whether that could be pop-up art or that could be permanent art, either one. And then there is the little library idea. Yes, yes. The other thing that we talked about in terms of increasing funding for arts was to deal with the models that are in other cities where public art pieces are encouraged or even required, or some percentage of the cost of the development is required to be used for some kind of public art. And we got a little bit off topic there too, talking about how to sort of flesh out some of these ideas. And after the meeting with the city council Monday evening, where they're giving us a lot of encouragement to think creatively and out of the box, so we thought perhaps we could engage a couple of the council members who are well-connected in the community, and perhaps even talk to people on the Planning and Zoning Commission, which is a commission. And we have a really good contact there because one of them is married to one of us. We talked with Mike about what's feasible to do in a non-official kind of way, but just expanding the ideas. And it turns out that we can do some meetings that are not official meetings as long as we don't have a quorum present. So we're sort of exploring the idea of talking to a member or two on the Planning and Zoning Commission and or the City Council and maybe even Parks and Rec, and talk to them about some of these possibilities so that we can sort of maybe look for models in other cities or look at other kinds of suggestions and brilliant ideas that people that are already working on behalf of the city have. So we'll try and do a little bit of that in the next month before our next meeting. I've kind of contacted Kelly, just, okay. And so maybe we'll have some of those informal discussions without having to do a big special meeting and without having to have the staff record every word that we say and that kind of thing. So that was sort of our meeting, and I'm real hopeful that we'll be able to spend the rest of the money unless somebody has a better idea. But again, Mike's suggestion that we use people who've already applied to us and people whom we've already vetted seems like a real shortcut for us. So that's what we did.
Thank you. That was a very thorough report. Are there any questions for Harriet or Bob?
Or Ed?
I have, actually, it's a question for Mike, and it goes to, say we do find that artist, or we pick within the top 5 and say, and line things up. Is there a way we can do a certain portion of the payment with this year's and a certain portion with next year's budget?
As long as the artist is under contract and services are being rendered within this fiscal year, we would be able to use the remaining FY18 balance. As you know, unless for some reason the only reason we wouldn't be able to is if we didn't get a contract with the artist or have something in motion until after October 31st. And if that were the case, then we would no longer be able to use that fund balance. But with the option of having the foundation and a few other options, we may be able to place that money in that restricted fund that we could use even if we go beyond October 31st. So there are options, and so we're not under as much of a time crunch as we've been in the past, but I think we certainly, in good faith, would like to use that fund balance that's in FY18 in the FY18 schedule. You know.
But that would perhaps enlarge the amount of money that we could spend?
If you wanted to dip into FY19's budget, and that would need to be a decision by the commission.
Is that kind of complicated?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, it would be complicated in that we wouldn't have had a formal approval of a budget from the city council by that time. So we'd just have to make sure that, we have the budget to work with, so. Does that answer your question, Bob? Anybody else? Pat, did you have any? Okay. All right, if there's no further questions for the Public Art Committee, very briefly, you heard about Family Art Day, the music that we're going to have. That sounds very exciting, and I hope we get a lot of students. I think that'll be great. As far as the balance of the year, I've got a few ideas, but truthfully, I haven't put them in motion, and I haven't really thought too much more about it. So I would hope to have at least one more Family Art Day before year end. I'm pretty sure we'll have one definitely in the fall, but it's just with the heat out there, I can't even imagine doing anything outside. So stay tuned. I'll give it some more thought and have another conversation about this in our next meeting. Okay, we'll move on to our consent agenda, and I believe the only consent agenda that we have is the meeting, is the minutes from our last June meeting. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
All those in favor? That's, okay, that's unanimous. Were there any corrections or additions to the minutes? Okay, that motion carries. All right, so we're, is there any old business to talk about?
Only one item, and not on the agenda, but I wanted to point out in your packet, I've included a new copy, an updated copy of the Raymore Arts Commission bylaws as amended. And so feel free to use those copy. This will be the copy going forward that we will refer to for, as if you remember, we voted on the change to the voting requirement.
Okay. All right, with that, we'll move into new business, and we're going to, you all got a copy in your packet of the feedback from the City Council joint meeting. Mike, thank you for taking some good notes. I hope you all had a chance to kind of read through it. And were there any comments, questions, or whatever from any of the commissioners about anything that was commented on in those notes for Mike? Or just general comments? I think Lauren?
Yeah, I've got a question. I guess the question still remains for me is what exactly is our role going to be?
As far as the Public Performing Arts Committee? Right, well that, as I stated in that meeting, the first item of business for the Performing Arts Committee, and I had selected 3 people to be on that committee, and the first role will be to determine what our goals and objectives are for that. The city really kind of basically left it open to us to make our decisions about what we thought we'd want to do, but it's clear that until we know, what the venue's going to look like and what other venues are available, and possibly get volunteer feedback or feedback from the community, I don't think we can exactly tie down what it is we're charged with, because I don't think we know at this point, other than coming up with concepts and ideas. We don't know what the budget's going to be exactly, so there's a whole bunch of things that have to come together before we can make a final decision about our exact role. Does that make sense? Everybody? Okay. So I'm hopeful, and Mike, you can tell me, I'm hopeful that we might have a first preliminary meeting sometime like after the summer. I mean, the budget won't be set for us till October or November, actually.
Right, it'll be the last full meeting in October will be we should have a good idea though, going into September, mid-September, what our budget as the commission will look like. What I would like to do at some point is maybe here in the next couple of weeks or 1st of August, if we could get the Public Art Committee together at some point. I know with kind of some members coming and going, we may also want to look at how we want that committee to look like as well. I would like to get the committee together once, just as kind of an informal outline, to discuss an informal outline, to talk about, you know, how ambitious do we want those goals to be? Do we want those goals to be tied to the budget, or do we want them to be tied to something different? For example, the Public Art Committee has a public art selection process that's not necessarily tied to a budget, but that could be something that the Public Performance Committee could begin discussing if that was something that would be interesting to them. And so my vision is sometime at the end of July, beginning of August, we would have at least one informal meeting.
And I would encourage this first meeting, a committee as per bylaws has to be 3 commission members. But anybody is welcome to attend, but the 3 commission members would be the ones voting on any action. But certainly, I would invite any of you to attend, obviously, any of those meetings, and particularly as we start forming our process for that Performing Arts Committee. It's important that we all have input and feedback. So once Mike extends the invitation for, and Mike will be our staff support on that committee as well as the PAC, and we can't call it PAC because there is already a PAC. Yeah, PAC 2, PAC 1. But, so Mike will send out an invite for a meeting, for that first meeting, and as I say, if it's, mid-August or end of August, that's fine. I mean, we're already through mid-July, so more to come on that. Okay. Any other comments or questions about our joint meeting? Okay. All right, well, we'll file those minutes and we'll be talking about the Performing Arts Committee. Now, commissioner comments. I'll start off, just for those who don't know, Becky has resigned from the commission, effective today, actually effective last night. So we are now down to 6 commissioners. Becky was from Ward 2, so that leaves a vacancy in Ward 2 and a vacancy on our commission until it's filled again. So we're back kind of trying to determine if we have any applicants out there, or if we have previous applicants that are from Ward 2, because she was from Ward 2, then we'll need to look at that. Her term expired next year, but whoever fills that term, or whoever fills her vacancy, will finish out the term and then be up for reappointment in 2019. And before I forget, are we official with Bob and Lauren as far as them being reappointed?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Bob and Lauren are now officially on the commission for, remind me, is it a 3-year term now, or?
It's a 3-year term, and so Bob Berry's at-large term will expire July 31st, 2021, and then Lauren Jones's at-large term will expire at the same time. Okay.
All right. And before we turn this over to Pat, because Pat has some interesting ideas that she'd like to present, as you know, August is the end of my term as chairman. It's the end of the term for Harriet as co-chair or vice chair, and therefore I would like to tell you that be thinking of nominations for chair and vice chair. The August meeting will be open nominations. We will not have a slate. Mike will run the open nominations towards the end of that meeting. So if you want to consider yourself running for chair or vice chair, or you want to nominate somebody, just be thinking about it, because August is when we have to do that. And I just, want everybody to be thinking hard about it. And what the commissioner has to, what the chair has to do is stated in your bylaws. It's pretty easy. Just be available for public comment, or, monthly meetings with Mike. Running the meetings, pretty easy. So I think that was all I had to say. And with that, I'll turn it over to Pat, because she would like to, oh, I'm sorry.
Do you want to review the terms of the rest of us while we're at it?
Oh.
So Commissioner Paris from Ward 1, term will expire in July of 2020. Commissioner Lawrence, term will expire in July of 2019. Commissioner Love will expire, from Ward 4 will expire July 2019. And then Commissioner Setzer's term will expire in July of 2020.
Thank you. Okay, to give Pat enough time, unless somebody else had a commissioner comment, I'm going to let Pat talk about her idea for a community sing-along that will, actually, she's going to present general ideas tonight, but it'll go before our commission for a vote in August, but she'd like to just talk about it right now.
Thank you. At our May meeting, we had discussions about the performing aspect that was going to happen. And we also had discussions about different venues in town, places for things, engaging people in music,
maybe more actively than just listening. I had thought about this for a while, and I mentioned the idea of a holiday sing-along proposal. So I decided to just see what I could do, and started looking for places and talking to people and searching to find out what communities have done this. I spoke with a number of choir directors, active and retired, and nobody in the area really does this, but I found places in different states that have done versions of this. In fact, towns that do annual ones, and they have wonderful pictures, and they grow and have good crowds. Anyway, before I launch into this, and I've written up something you can take with you so you can look at. It's a roughed in of what could happen on this. But I'd like to say I found a way to get us into a venue at St. Paul's Methodist Church. I am not a member of that church. I have never attended anything there, and really don't know anybody there. But the reason I decided to make a contact there, I had 11 student teachers in the Raymore Peculiar School District this past year, and during that, working with those student teachers, there's times when we find out about students and families that have had a tough time and how the school helped them get going, getting things back on track. And one of the things that popped up all year long was that people from St. Paul's Methodist assisted these families, that they had a really quite a good outreach into the community with people that weren't their members. And I thought, well, that seems pretty open. Maybe they would consider letting us do this. So after the May meeting, I found a way to find the people in charge of those sorts of things and have some discussions, informal and then a little more formal, about how would we really do this. And we have an agreement that if we can work out logistics for them to host a holiday sing-along. One of the reasons I went there, other than the fact that they seemed to have a mission that kind of was trying to embrace the entire community, which is what we're trying to do, is that they're in an easy location. They have lots of parking. They have covered space. If the people attending, if the weather's bad or they're disabled or need to be in an easy way to get into the building, that place offers it. They also have a connection with Foxwood and do bus shuttles for that, so that's kind of already set up. It's all one level for them, for where they would do the sing-along. There's also been comments from the council to involve the school, so was able to get a hold of the high school choir director, who happens to actually also work at Methodist, but I knew him as the high school guy, to help do this. Working with kids is one thing, working with adult groups is another, and he does have some experience to do this. I have a lot of experience doing this with adult groups to set this up and make it work. He was very interested in doing it and wanted to bring the high school kids in to help make that more successful and maybe feel a little more comfortable doing those sorts of things. We need to have a date. We need to get school administrators back so we can set a date. But the date, we're looking for a one-time event, and this would be a one-time thing, but if it could be an annual thing, that would be a good thing. And St. Paul's was like, yeah, we would prefer one time a year, and we don't want a regular thing. But we think the event would build. I've looked at other communities, and that's how they get it rolling. People do it. And one other comment about St. Paul's, they have the ability to help us a lot on this, where they can take the lyrics and put them up on a screen. Some people would still rather have a piece of paper in their hand. It's easier for them to read than a screen far away, so they could help us do that. And they can also live stream this and record it. So if there were people who had planned to come, if the weather's bad or they're not feeling well, they could go to the Facebook link, and there it is happening. And they'd also be able to record the thing. They can show their grandkids later, here, look, I am doing this. And, but we thought that was a nice feature. They would be able to do that for us. Anyway, We've got some, I've handed this out, we've got some basic timelines for this. There's a budget built in. Part of this budget, if this doesn't, we want it to happen after school is out, just after the high school is out. But if in the event it can't, we need to bust that choir in, and that's built in here in the event that have to happen. We are conscious of the fact that a lot of our older citizens would rather never drive at night, and the sun sets early, and we're looking between Thanksgiving and Christmas on a weekday afternoon. And have this event, then have a time where they can come and visit, and the church will provide refreshments and that sort of thing, and then they can go do what they want to do. So anyway, I'll hand this to you so you can have a look. This is just rough, but would love to give this a whirl. Could be a lot of fun. These are songs people know, and I have these for you. Sacred and secular, both. Mostly they're going to know the words. We know some people will have forgotten the words. And I've got a place on here to try to reach out and embrace Benton House, Foxwood, even Foxwood people who may not be affiliated with that church, to run a rehearsal for them, to know what to work with Stephen and know what songs we're doing, know what key they're in, so I can get them in the right place and help them through so that they feel more comfortable about this. And try to just involve as many as we can in a fun, easy, low pressure sort of sing along, and then with those choir kids to help make it sound a little better. And they'll probably do some of their special songs that we won't know, but that's okay. We'll sing on the others. So anyway, that's what I've been doing since May, to see sort of what that was like, to try to get a little groundwork going for the performance people and answer their questions about things. That's kind of it.
Pat, thank you very much. You've done a lot of work on this, and while we can't really discuss it tonight because it's a formal agenda item for our next month, I would encourage you all to read through this and think about it. We'll be sure and have this on the agenda for our August meeting. And truthfully, if it's going to happen after after October 31st, this would be a budget consideration for next year, not this year.
Some of the work will need to be done well before that. If we have to rescore, older voices don't sing where kid voices do. You're going to be rescoring and rewriting that, okay. And you have to do that for your pianists. That you can't, we're not waiting until Thanksgiving to do it. Okay. So a bunch of the groundwork, the pieces will be decided, the lyrics can be written out, and all that sort of work can be done. The actual part of them doing it, the conductor, the accompanist would be later, but some of that groundwork, a couple $100 of that could be done and needs to be done. If you wait till Thanksgiving, we won't make it.
Okay. Well, thank you again. I think it sounds like a grand idea, and I hope we'll all give it much consideration, and we'll talk about it more in our August meeting. It will be part of our, part of our agenda for that meeting. You've done a lot of work. That's great. Thank you very much. This is just wonderful. Really appreciate it. So I'm going to reserve questions for Pat until we've all had a chance to mull through this and give it some thought, and then come prepared at the next meeting before we actually decide to vote on that. And Pat, will that give us enough time to put this, if we vote on it in August? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there any other comments or questions from anybody? Staff? No?
Only other item we'll be bringing in August will also be a schedule of all of the meetings for the remainder of 2018 and into 2019. We'll also be bringing a draft budget. It will just be an update based on the work plan and the items that will be on the agenda. So this item will include on the agenda as part of the draft budget. We'll put this after we have a discussion of this item as it's added to the agenda. So along with the chair election, we'll also have the the selection of dates, and then I believe that should be all for housekeeping items in that month.
Right. Okay. With that, may I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, this meeting is now adjourned. Thank you so much.